Evolution spent millions of years perfecting a male antechinus, and then it built him to self-destruct. He gets one breeding season. He'll mate for up to 14 hours at a stretch, his stress hormones flooding so high that his own immune system eats itself, and by the end of it, every male in the population is dead. Not from predators, from sex. He was never designed to see a second spring, and he wouldn't understand it if he did. For a whole branch of the animal kingdom, being born male isn't a gift. It's a countdown. So let's start with that little marsupial, because once you understand how the antechinus dies, the rest of this gets a lot stranger. The antechinus is a tiny, mouse-like creature that lives in Australia. If you saw one scurrying through leaf litter, you'd probably mistake it for a mouse and move on with your day. But it isn't a rodent at all. It's a marsupial, more closely related to kangaroos and koalas than to anything in your kitchen. For most of its short life, it behaves like any other small animal. It hunts insects. It avoids becoming someone else's dinner. It survives. And then the breeding season arrives, and the whole species seems to lose its mind. For a few weeks each year, the males stop eating properly and start mating with a kind of desperation that's hard to overstate. A single mating session can last around 14 hours. The males race from female to female, fighting, copulating, barely resting. And the reason for the marathon isn't just enthusiasm. It's chemistry. To fuel this frenzy, their bodies dump enormous amounts of stress hormones into the blood, including cortisol. In a normal animal, a system exists to keep those hormones in check, to switch the flood off before it does real damage. In the male antechinus, that off switch fails during the breeding season. The cortisol just keeps climbing. And cortisol at those levels is poison. It suppresses the immune system. It breaks down the body's own tissues to keep the engine running. Internal bleeding, infections, parasites that a healthy animal would shrug off. All of it sweeps in at once. Within days or weeks of the season ending, every single male is dead. The females, who don't experience the same hormonal collapse, live on. They carry the pregnancies, give birth, and raise the next generation entirely on their own. The fathers never meet their offspring. They were gone before the young were even born. This pattern has a name. Biologists call it semelparity, which is a clinical word for a brutal idea. It means an animal reproduces only once in its entire life and then dies, often as a direct consequence of reproducing. Salmon do a version of it, fighting upstream to spawn and then rotting in the shallows. But the antechinus does something rarer and bleaker. It's one of the very few mammals that has wired self-destruction directly into the act of mating, and it's wired it almost exclusively into the males. Here's the part that messes with your head. From evolution's point of view, this isn't a malfunction. It's the design working perfectly. The male's entire genetic purpose is to father as many offspring as possible. If he's going to die soon anyway, holding nothing back becomes the smartest possible bet. Burn every reserve, mate until the body fails, and let the next generation carry the genes forward. The male isn't a tragedy in this equation. He's a delivery system, and once the delivery is made, he's surplus. Now, if a self-destructing mouse marsupial were the strangest thing evolution had cooked up in this department, that would be plenty. It isn't, because down in the deep ocean, where the sunlight never reaches, there's a creature that took the disposable male idea and pushed it somewhere genuinely surreal. You already know what it looks like, even if you don't know its name. The deep-sea anglerfish is the one with the lure on its head, that little glowing fishing rod dangling a spot of light in the blackness. It's a Hollywood monster come to life, all teeth and shadow. And in almost every picture you've ever seen of one, you've been looking at a female. The famous anglerfish, the big one with the lamp and the jaws, is always a she. The male is a different animal entirely. In some of these ceratioid anglerfish species, the male is a fraction of the female's size, sometimes dozens of times smaller. He's barely more than a swimming nose with fins. He has no lure, no terrifying grin, no real means of hunting. What he has is an extraordinary sense of smell and a single mission. In the vast, pitch-black emptiness of the deep sea, where you might go a lifetime without bumping into another member of your species, he has to find a female before he starves. And he isn't built to feed himself for long. It's find her or die trying. When he finds her, what happens next is one of the most extreme acts of commitment in the animal kingdom. He bites onto her body and he doesn't let go. His mouth fuses to her skin, and then, slowly, the two of them merge. His tissues grow into hers. Their blood vessels connect until they share a single bloodstream. He stops being an independent creature. He loses his eyes because he'll never need to see again. He loses his fins, his organs, most of what made him a fish. What's left is essentially a small lump hanging off the female's side, fed by her blood, doing one job. He produces sperm on demand for the rest of her life. He has become a permanent reproductive organ that used to be an animal. If this is the kind of strange you came here for, stick around, because the explanation behind it is even better than the spectacle. And, if you're enjoying this, a quick subscribe helps more of these stories find their way to you. A female anglerfish doesn't always settle for one. Researchers have found individual females carrying multiple fused males at once, in some cases as many as 8. A cluster of shriveled partners all plumbed into the same body. She becomes a self-contained breeding colony, never having to search for a mate again because she's carrying her mates with her. But this is where the story turns from merely bizarre to genuinely astonishing. And it comes down to a problem you might not expect. Think about what fusion actually requires. In nearly every animal with a backbone, including us, the immune system is built to attack foreign tissue. It's the reason organ transplants get rejected. Sew one creature's flesh permanently into another's, share a bloodstream, and the body should treat the intruder as an infection and destroy it. By every normal rule of biology, the male anglerfish should be rejected the moment he fuses on. He isn't. And in 2024, researchers at Yale published work in the journal Current Biology that explained how. These anglerfish have given up large parts of their adaptive immune system, the very machinery that would normally recognize and reject foreign tissue. Some species have shed it almost entirely. They traded away one of the most fundamental defenses an animal has, the ability to tell self from not self, in exchange for the ability to literally become one flesh with a mate. Evolution looked at a body's first line of defense against disease and decided that, for these fish, finding a partner mattered more. So you've got two creatures that couldn't seem more different. A furry little marsupial in an Australian forest that mates itself to death in a single season. A monstrous fish in the lightless deep whose males dissolve into the bodies of their partners. And yet, they're both answers to the same underlying question. The question is this: when mates are hard to come by, or when a population's best shot is one explosive burst of reproduction, what is a male actually worth after he's reproduced? Evolution's cold answer is not much. Fitness isn't measured in how long an individual lives, it's measured in offspring. A male antechinus who survives to a peaceful old age, but holds back during the one season that matters loses to the male who spends everything and dies. A male anglerfish who keeps his eyes and his fins and his independence, but can never find a female in all that darkness, loses to the one who gives up his whole body for a guaranteed connection. In both cases, the male's survival is simply not the point. The female endures because she carries and raises the future. The male is the part evolution is willing to throw away once it has what it needs. And neither animal knows any of this. The antechinus doesn't grieve the spring it won't see. The anglerfish doesn't mourn the eyes it gave up. They're just following the instructions written into them across millions of years. Instructions that treat the individual male as a single-use tool. That's the quietly unsettling thing about all of it. We tend to imagine evolution as a force that builds creatures to survive. Most of the time, that's exactly what it does. But survival was never the goal. It was only ever a means. The real goal is the next generation, and if the cheapest way to get there is to build a male who burns out in 14 hours or fuses into oblivion in the dark, evolution will build him without hesitation and without regret. For these animals, being born male was never a life. It was a deadline. If you found this as fascinating as I did, there are plenty more stories like this on the channel.